Following today's oral arguments, the Supreme Court appears ready to uphold a ban on TikTok that is set to take effect in 9 days. The popular app is used by as many as 170 million users in the U.S. A bipartisan law orders TikTok to shut down in 9 days unless it finds a new owner that is not in China or the Supreme Court takes action.
To give you some background, lawmakers fear that through TikTok, China could acquire Americans' private data or could push propaganda that would sow discord. It's a risk that TikTok's lawyer acknowledged to the 9 justices this morning.
That they would use that information over time to develop spies, to turn people, to blackmail people, people who a generation from now will be working in the FBI or the CIA or in the State Department. Is that not a realistic assessment by Congress and the President of the risks here?
Well, Your Honor, I'm not disputing the risks. I certainly acknowledge the risk, but I think there are lots of reasons, not just the one I just gave, but there are lots of reasons why that risk still can't justify the law.
Let's get the latest on what happened today with CNN Chief Supreme Court analyst Joan Biskupik. Joan, it looks like the justices are not going to block this ban.
It does, but I've got a couple caveats. No, you could tell that they were with the federal government here in terms of the main motivation. But there are a couple questions. There are actually 3. First of all, is this a First Amendment infringement? And once you get past that, has the Congress passed a law that's narrowly tailored to kind of meet its compelling interest to override the First Amendment free speech interest? And then after that, what about timing? Because that did come up here. Could this possibly not take effect on January 19th, which is when it's scheduled to take effect, which of course is a day before President-elect Donald Trump comes in? First of all, on that exchange that you just listened to, there was so much concern about the potential for, Chinese espionage. At one point, the Chief Justice also said, so are we supposed to ignore the fact that the ultimate parent is, in fact, subject to doing intelligence work for the Chinese government? Because TikTok, while an American company, is owned ultimately by ByteDance, which is, headquartered in Beijing. So that was a real concern. But those 2 grounds that you just mentioned that Congress passed the law based on, the data collection for blackmail and other espionage, and the covert manipulation, it was that latter grounds that the justices were really suspicious about. Doesn't everyone know now that TikTok is owned by a Chinese parent company? Wouldn't they know that potentially that there could be some manipulation? So I think the justices might not agree with the government on the extent of the grounds here. So bottom line, it looks like this court is ready to rule against TikTok, but then finally timing. The question came up of whether there should be some postponement of the effect of the law taking place on January 19th, which is what Congress had dictated when it passed the law back in April. President-elect Donald Trump has said, put a pause on it. TikTok has said, put a pause on it. And the justices started to ask about that. And the Solicitor General of the United States, currently the Biden administration Solicitor General, said, no, if you're going to rule for us based on our national security grounds that it looked like they were ready to buy, there's no reason to say that that would justify any kind of postponement here. But there seemed to be some sentiment about should they act when we're in the middle of a transition between administrations, and what would the consequence be if they were to do it that way?
It's going to be so interesting what happens, especially with the timing. Joan, thank you so much for that.
Sure.
We do appreciate it.